20,000 years ago, in the heart of the Paleolithic era, survival was a daily battle between man and nature. Deep in the vast wilderness, a primitive tribe moved silently through the rocky terrain, guided by their wise and battle-hardened chief, Tua. This tribe relied on their strength, unity, and the ritual of the great hunt to sustain themselves. It was not merely tradition. It was a matter of life and death. That morning, the air was still and heavy. Tua knelt to the ground, his fingers brushing over the dirt and dried feces of an animal herd. His dark eyes scanned the horizon as he sniffed the scent left behind. With solemn determination, he smeared the dung on his face as camouflage. "Prepare yourselves," he growled. "This is our moment." The rest of the tribe followed, smearing their faces and gripping their spears tightly. Hunger had taken its toll. Some hadn't eaten in days. Even the sight of giant ants crawling nearby was too tempting to resist. One man silently popped the insects into his mouth for the little nourishment they offered. Their target was a massive herd of yak, grazing in the distance. As the signal was given, the tribe let out a primal roar, charging toward the beasts with ferocity only desperation could fuel. The yaks responded in kind, stampeding toward the humans. It was not just a hunt. It was war. Coda, the young son of Chief Tua, was among the hunters. Barely into manhood, he had little hunting experience, but he was determined to prove his worth. As the two forces clashed, Coda found himself face to face with a furious yak. His grip on his spear faltered, and before he could react, the beast rammed into him, tossing him into the air like a rag doll. The world became a blur. Screams echoed around him as the herd thundered past. Coda landed hard on the rocky ground, dazed and gasping. The yak wasn't done. With another surge, it charged again, lifting Coda on its horns. The young warrior could do nothing but hold on in terror as the beast sprinted toward the edge of a massive cliff. Chief Tua screamed his son's name and flung his spear with deadly precision. It struck the yak, but instead of stopping, the enraged animal rushed even faster. At the cliff's edge, the yak stumbled and hurled Coda forward. He soared through the air. Then silence. Tua and the tribe raced the cliff. Below, Coda clung with one hand to a jagged rock ledge, his other arm dangling. His father called out, "Don't let go." But the rock beneath Coda's fingers crumbled, and he fell. The tribe gasped, frozen in horror. Tua made a move to climb down, but his tribesmen held him back. "You're our leader. We cannot lose you, too," they pleaded. Helpless, Tua stood at the edge, screaming his son's name until night fell. Days passed. The tribe moved on, mourning their loss. Tua, grieving but resolute, carved a stone marker at the cliff's edge, a tombstone for his fallen son. He turned away, choosing the survival of the many over the heartbreak of one. But far below, among the shadows and silence, a miracle stirred. A hungry vulture swooped down to feast on what it thought was a corpse. Yet as the bird pecked, a hand lashed out. Coda was alive. Coda awoke in agony. His leg was twisted unnaturally, swelling and bruised. He cried out for help, his voice echoing to the canyon. But no one came. Desperation clawed at him. He was alone, broken and trapped. Rain clouds rolled overhead, and soon a storm unleashed itself upon the canyon. Thunder boomed, and rainwater began to flood the rocks beneath him. As the downpour thickened, the rising water below offered a dangerous hope. Clutching onto the cliff face, his fingers bleeding and numb, Coda made a decision. He let go. The fall into the rain-fed basin below knocked the air from his lungs. The freezing water enveloped him, shocking him into survival mode. He struggled to the muddy shore and dragged himself onto land, coughing and shivering. His ankle was shattered, and movement was near impossible. He needed to act quickly. Crawling to a dry patch, Coda examined his mangled foot. The pain was unbearable. With primal grit, he gathered stones and crafted a primitive brace. Gritting his teeth, he slammed one rock against his foot, realigning the bone with a gut-wrenching scream. Tears streamed down his face, but the job was done. He could stand barely. Every step was a battle, but he moved. He limped to higher ground and saw the stone tomb his father had built, his own memorial. The sight shattered his heart. They had given up on him. With trembling fists, he smashed the stones in fury and grief. Coda was no longer waiting to be saved. He would survive. That night, he heard a sound, howling, a pack of wolves. Fear gripped him. He turned and ran as fast as his injured leg allowed. The wolves chased him through the forest. His only hope was a tree. With one final burst of strength, he leapt and clawed his way up just as the alpha wolf snapped at his foot. He pulled a small bone dagger and slashed at the beast, wounding it and saving himself. From the safety of the branches, Coda watched as the wolves circled below. Days passed. The pack grew bored and eventually left, except for the wounded alpha. Coda climbed down, weak and wary. He fashioned a spear for protection, determined to end the threat. But as he approached the injured wolf, he hesitated. The beast was suffering. It bared its teeth but couldn't rise. Coda could not kill it. Instead, he approached slowly, speaking softly. He fashioned a makeshift muzzle, tied it with fibers, and gently lifted the animal in his arms. He carried it for miles to a riverside shelter, cleaned its wounds, and shared what little food and water he had. He named the wolf Alpha. That night, both boy and beast lay side by side beneath the stars. Neither trusted the other completely, but something ancient stirred between them, a bond born of survival. Days passed, and the bond between Coda and Alpha slowly grew stronger. Each morning, Coda would gather herbs to treat their wounds, while Alpha watched him cautiously. At first, the wolf snarled at his approach, but over time, it began to trust the boy who fed it, healed it, and spoke to it like a brother. Alpha eventually allowed Coda to touch it without growling. The moment Alpha drank water from Coda's hand was when everything changed. Their truce became a partnership. Hunger pushed Coda to hunt. For the first time, he caught a rabbit. It was a painful decision, as he had always struggled with the idea of killing, but survival left no room for softness. He built a fire in a nearby cave and roasted a rabbit, the smell drawing Alpha's eager attention. The wolf lunged, but Coda stopped it with a firm command. Alpha paused, his instincts warring with his respect for Coda, but finally he backed off. Coda tore a piece of meat and handed it to Alpha, who accepted it without aggression. From that moment, they shared every meal. Together, they healed. Together, they grew stronger. Winter loomed. Snow began to fall and the forest turned white. During one cold night, Coda heard a low growl. Alpha stood, alert. From the shadows appeared a pack of wolves, Alpha's old pack. The new leader approached. Alpha stepped forward, growling. The two wolves exchanged silent signals, understanding dominance memory. The pack leader sniffed the air, gave Alpha a lingering look, then turned and walked away. Alpha didn't follow. He looked back at Coda. The boy smiled sadly, understanding. "Go," he whispered. "They're your family." Alpha hesitated. Then he ran, disappearing into the snow-covered trees. Coda was alone again. He pressed on. But loneliness was a heavy burden. Every sound in the woods felt louder, every cold night more unbearable. Then one morning, as Coda crossed a frozen lake, he saw the wolf pack feasting in the distance. He cupped his hands and called out, "Alpha!" Suddenly, the ice beneath him cracked. Coda plunged into the freezing water. He thrashed, unable to find the hole again. The current dragged him down. His vision blurred. Then a shadow. Alpha! The wolf leapt onto the ice, slamming it with his body. It didn't break. Again. Then Alpha picked up Coda's dagger, gripped it in his jaws, and hacked at the ice until it finally cracked. Coda burst through, gasping. Alpha dragged him to shore, licking his frozen face, whining urgently. That night, Alpha curled around Coda to keep him warm. The boy survived because of the beast he once spared. Their bond was no longer survival. It was family. Coda and Alpha had become inseparable, their bond deepened by the countless dangers they had faced together. Days turned to weeks as they traveled across jagged cliffs, icy plains, and dense forests, each step a test of endurance. They had healed together, hunted together, and now they were seeking something neither had, a home. But the journey was not yet over. One afternoon, while foraging near the edge of a glacier, Alpha froze. Her ears twitched, nose lifted to the wind. Coda followed her gaze movement in the distance. Hyenas, a pack, lean and hungry, emerging from the white fog like ghosts. There was no time to think. Coda grabbed a spear, and the two sprinted across the snow. His old injury ached with every step. The hyenas closed in fast, snarling and laughing in that eerie way only they could. Alpha barked and snapped at their heels, fending off the fastest pursuers. Ahead, a dark hollow in the mountain face, an ice cave. They dove inside, hearts pounding, as the hyenas skidded past, unable to spot them through the swirling snow. Coda dropped to his knees, gasping. Alpha stood guard, fur bristling. But safety was an illusion. From deep within the cave came a low growl. Not from a hyena, not from Alpha. The sound was deeper, darker, ancient. A black panther emerged from the shadows. Its fur shimmered like obsidian, its eyes glowed like twin moons. It stalked forward, muscles tense, every movement a silent threat. Coda slowly raised his bow. Alpha snarled, teeth bared. The cave was too small for an escape. The panther pounced. Alpha met it midair. The two animals collided with a thunderous roar. Fur flew, claws slashed, teeth tore. Coda tried to get a clear shot, but the fight moved too fast. The panther was larger, but Alpha was faster and fueled by something more, loyalty. Then the panther pinned Alpha. Its jaws moved for the throat. Coda didn't hesitate. He released the arrow. The shot struck true. The panther slumped. Dead. Blood pooled in the ice. Alpha lay on her side, chest heaving. Wounded but alive. Coda rushed to her, cradling her head in his arms. "You saved me," he whispered. Again. They left the cave behind as snow began to fall harder than ever. Winter was in full fury now, and every step forward became a struggle against the cold. As days passed, Alpha's wound began to slow her down. One morning, she couldn't get up. Coda begged her to try, but she collapsed again, without a word. He lifted her onto his back and continued walking. The boy who had once been flung off a cliff now climbed a mountain carrying a wolf. He carried her over frozen rivers, through blizzards, across dead forests. At night, he built fires and lay beside her, whispering stories of home, of his father, of the hunt he once failed. He would not fail now. Then, at last, on the horizon, he saw it. Smoke, tents, movement, the tribe. Coda stumbled into camp, exhausted and half-frozen. He collapsed at the feet of his people, Alpha still in his arms. Gasps and cries echoed as his father, Chief Tua, rushed forward. He dropped to his knees. "Coda," he whispered, unbelieving. "You're alive?" The boy opened his eyes. "Save her," he croaked. "She saved me." The tribe's healer was called. Alpha was taken away, and Coda was wrapped in furs and warmed by fire. When he awoke hours later, he asked for only one thing. "Where's Alpha?" The healer smiled. "She lives. And there is more. She was with child." Coda's eyes widened. Alpha, his companion, his protector, had carried life inside her the entire journey. She had fought not just for him, but for her pups. That night, Alpha gave birth. A litter of healthy, squirming wolf pups. The tribe gathered, awestruck. They had heard the stories of Coda's survival, his friendship with the beast, his defiance of death itself. But this moment sealed it. The pups were named after the stars and the wind and the snow. The tribe welcomed them as symbols of strength, of change, of the bond between man and nature. Alpha recovered quickly, her spirit unbroken. She took to patrolling the edges of the camp, ever watchful. The pups grew, playing with the children, learning to hunt, becoming part of the tribe. Coda, now stronger than ever, stood beside his father. No longer a boy. He was a warrior, a survivor, a leader. His story was told around every fire. The boy who fell, who was left for dead, who came home with a wolf at his side and fire in his heart. One morning, Coda climbed the same cliff from which he had fallen. He looked out at the endless wild, Alpha beside him, her pups tumbling behind. "Thank you," he said, more to the world than anyone. He had left as a child. he returned as a legend,